Hello and welcome to Nick V Uncensored. Today we've got Marianne Perz, and today we're going to be talking about how Marianne, a mother, has had her children stolen from her by CAS, which is the Children Aid Society in Canada. And obviously this is child trafficking, fraud. We know about the deep state, and this is a lot of people can associate this with what's going on with the Epstein Island and stuff like that. And it's just all one big web of corruption. And we're going to listen to your story, Marianne. But first of all, thank you so much for joining me. How are you, and what have you been up to?
Thank you, Nicholas, for having me on. As I mentioned, it's cold up in Canada, -20. But it's crisp and beautiful. I have been, as you know, engaged in trying to find some remedy for 14 years now, and it's been a long, hard battle arriving at the conclusions that taking the routes I thought going through courts and governments is not going to yield anything, because that's where this crime is rooted in.
Absolutely, yeah. So why don't you start at the beginning for us? Tell us the beginning, and just right now, tell us actually, are you still on this mission of looking for your children?
I absolutely am. At this point, my avenues have turned to trying to outreach publicly to my daughter that she might hear this.
Okay.
And somebody may help support her. This is about my only avenue to help me get this through the ethers out publicly for her. This is the route I can see now. And I've been separated from my two sons who were stolen, and completely stolen, separated from my daughter now of 14 years, Padme, from forgery. But I'll start, as we've talked about, that one of the saddest things that I ever understood was that there were organizations that profited from separating children from moms and dads. And I mean biological. This is the key root, is that there's a separation. So one day I had my life together. As you know, I was an athlete. I, in fact, ran for Canada. I worked as a mediator. I still do. And I was a little overwhelmed as a single mom. And suddenly the Children's Aid Society plopped into my world. And it was due to, they orchestrate and count upon family disputes and all kinds of dynamics. And then they play, and then they're really good and trained at going in and finding a way to find a weakness and plunk your children from you for no reasons. So they came in, and I had my two sons at the time were 9 and 11, my dear sons, Adam and David. And I was a single mom, it was tough financially. And I really was a little naive, having worked in family court myself. I knew that Children's Aid Society, which is Children Protective Services, is just another contractee on it. I didn't realize just what was going on, to what extent. I knew that they were very tough. I didn't really understand. I thought they really only came in when there was a real problem of child abuse. I didn't understand what was going on. So that I had a couple of workers come in, are really, really cruel and angry and raging and abusive, and for no reasons. You got a messy living room. They find anything. And before I knew it, they separated my children away from me from my parents. They orchestrated the dynamics. They played on dynamics, and my sons were just their jaws dropped. Like, why? Where's mommy? Why are they taking mommy away? And the weirdest thing, Nicholas, is that all I knew is that when the Children's Aid came in, they were just puzzled. They didn't care where they put my sons, just so long as they weren't with me. They could put them anywhere. And they could. So they did that. And then they subjected me to, I would say, torture, calling me twice a day, every day, stressing me out, causing me, when I went to try to get extra work and jobs, they then phoned the employer to had me not be able to continue the position. They sabotaged. They tried bringing up false allegations of overusing medication I was prescribed for migraines. I simply just didn't take it. And when nothing would work, my children were separated from me in two ways. legally, Nicholas, because I was 8 minutes late to a court case, so the judge just needed me in default. It was about appearance number 13. I was about 10 minutes late getting in. And also because once the separation has occurred between me and my sons, and once it did, my sons were so stressed and so scared and alienated, and they knew the messages coming to them were be afraid, don't go to mommy. So in order to avoid the pain, they just shriveled away from me. And that's been a very daunting thing. But, I have been able to reconnect, at least with one of them in his late 20s. But my daughter was outright stolen right from the hospital for no reason, just an opportunity.
Right.
So, as you know, once the family court, these proceedings seemed just so nonsensical to me. There was no point in them, like a charade. Like, when they're bringing up supposed evidence that I didn't vacuum the floor one day, or, the most absurd stuff you can imagine. And any of the actual allegations were simply unfounded and proven untrue, as I said, what they were claiming. In another one, I used a diaper genie wrong for diapers for my, it's ludicrous. So what I did find, I found myself in 2011 pregnant, and I had to move to a different house north, and I was on my own. And sadly, I found myself in a vulnerable situation, which was a great opportunity for the Children's Aid Society to plunk a child. The father sadly didn't want any part of the pregnancy and had ended things. And I had hoped that in some way he would have at least taken part as a father, even if we weren't together. However, it moved on to other people. And what I noticed is the Children's Aid Society started hunting down my baby while I was pregnant. I actually had them coming at my doorstep, and they had no reasons. I asked them, what do you want? What do I need to do to make you go away? I don't have any vices. I own a house. I work. I have a car. I don't take drugs. I don't have mental illness. What do you need? Oh, well, we're just kind of looking, they said. Now, what had happened is, again, there was a family battle of my parents and Roman Catholic values. They were very shocked that I was pregnant without a father being present. And for whatever reason, they had wanted for my brother to raise my daughter. And that was being discussed while I was still pregnant. I didn't know any of these things are coming up. I was estranged from them. And I'm not blaming family's family, and it has its dynamics. The problem is when you get the state, the government coming in and taking advantage of that for profit at all these different levels.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's where my thing is. I mean, and so any true regulatory government that actually cared for its people would simply say to a family, you can't bother your daughter, whatever your values are, you've got to leave her alone. It's a mother and a daughter. But instead, they took advantage of that. So but I didn't realize how serious it was. I didn't. Oh, I had an obstetrician. And I went into labor, brought a friend with me, got to the hospital, and there was a birth alert. My obstetrician was not present. He was on vacation in Germany. There was a birth alert, and what they had is the opportunity. They had an opportunity of my parents, my family wanting a child to be raised somewhere by an uncle, and they had an opportunity of a vulnerability. I was on my own, no father, so I got in there, and it was probably the most horrible 48 hours of my life. When I gave birth, I remember the doctor said, "Congratulations." And I even thought to myself, I guess the state, the government, the crown, congratulations to it. I knew something was wrong. They couldn't do very much. And the nurse insisted on calling Children's Aid Society and told me there was something in my file. So this is what they did. They hunted it down, saw an opportunity, and pounced on it. They took her she was in a special care nursery, just as gaining her weight. Most of the children do. So she stayed a little bit, just gaining weight, and I nursed her. And the Children's Aid Society came in and bothered me the next day They came in and told me they had interest in my daughter. I said, why? What is it? Oh, because there was expressed concern on your parenting from family. So they'll take any little thing. They went and got a court order without me being noticed, served, not even knowing about it. Went into a judge and got an order to have interim custody, which means they could do what they wanted with her. And Nicholas, I can't, for a long time I blamed, that judge. I don't think the judge had a choice. I believe that these children aid child protective services run the show. And when they want something from a court, they get it. So once they had that piece of paper, then everything was easy for them. They snuck her out on a Friday morning before I gotten in to start seeing her and nursing her. And they trafficked her. Didn't know where she was. Took me a few days to find her. Put her in a foster person's home who boasted that she made over $50,000 a year in revenue from children. And so then the fight began. And I didn't know what was going on. And they lied to me. They told me, I said, what do you need for me to get my daughter back? What's going on? What do you want? And they couldn't give me any reasoning. I found out later they may have used that false test I told you from Hospital for Sick Children, and even they knew it was a false test. They may have used that they used it at the very beginning to get that interim custody and that huge advantage. Mm. At that point, they'd already won. Once they got her physically away from me, then they just churned their arguments to be actually saying to the court, we already got her, so can we keep her? And those are their arguments.
Wow. So I want to go back a little bit because I'm not sure if I missed it, and I do apologize, but what actually triggered them? Was it somebody in your family? Yeah. Because they were Catholic, yeah. And they were very against the fact that your child was being raised by a single mother like yourself?
Correct. I think there were probably, Nicholas, there are probably a couple of components going on there. One would have been from the family, from the grandparents. We were already in battle over my sons. So that, and Children's Aid brewed up the family battle. That's what so with that battle, which was taking place right around the pregnancy and giving birth, still ongoing, with that battle going, my parents I'm told, contact Children's Aid. I'm told that they wanted to have my daughter with my brother and his wife, Mike and Shannon. I don't even know Shannon. I hardly spoke to my brother in years. It was, and can you imagine they were planning out to have my daughter raised somewhere else. I had inklings of it, but I thought, Nicholas, it can't really be possible. The other thing I found in the files as well, in going through the research, is that a couple of the workers from the previous Children's Aid Society who hovered in to steal my boys away, had communicated with the next Children's Aid Society. So there were a couple of different communication routes they were using.
How much older? So how many boys do you have?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys and 1 girl, yeah?
1 girl.
And how old are the 2 boys today?
They're 25 and 27.
And how much older are they from your little girl?
About 14 years. My little girl's my little girl is 14 years old. I have to do the calculation in my head.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So,
and have the boys have any contact with the girl?
No. My boys have a different father, but that should not have made a difference. And so Derek, their father, was strong enough as a father to be able to encourage reuniting between me and the boys, and he really has helped. But he is not the father of Padme. Padme's father just left. And in fact, I don't know whether it was a matter of didn't want to pay child support, or he didn't want to be involved. So that was the vulnerability.
Mm. What's the closest success that you've got from your circumstances today? Where are you now with this?
Well, a good question. In terms of measuring success, the only avenues I've taken thus far, Nicholas, have been going to the police, getting investigations going that way, and going through court means. The journey has shown some successes in that, for example, I had a good success when I lived in in the 13, 14 years when I've been fighting, I lived in Quebec for a few of those years. And the MRC des Collines, which is a police agency, my local one in Quebec, did a full-blown investigation and did a full-blown conclusion with two detectives of a child theft abduction. They determined that there was a forgery. I guess I haven't gone to that part of my signature on adoption papers. They determined the lawyer who did this. They determined the Children's Aid Society workers who were aware of it, counted upon it, and then engaged into the fraud part of it. They noted the people who took my children, Mike and Shannon, and they noted how the whole thing. They did a wonderful thing, wonderful investigation. And when they rooted it out to the RCMP and to the Ottawa Police, it was buried, and we haven't been able to unearth it. We've been trying to find. It was buried, buried, buried.
So the police now, where do they stand right now? Is it continuing to be investigated, or have they dropped it, or?
They dropped it. There were a few different police agencies that tried. They dropped it. And the police became involved in the sense that because Children's Aid, I'll go back to what happened with my daughter. They stole her sometime in September 2011. And one day I want to just get into this detail. They were lying to me because they didn't have any case. They didn't have a reason to take her except a glorious opportunity. And they were lying to me saying, well, we're just considering, we're not sure what we're doing. Kept us apart. I was able to see her 2 times a week or something to nurse her. And I met the lawyer who was an in-house lawyer with the Children's Aid Society, a gentleman named Paul Lesarge. They had not actually filed any type of paperwork other than grabbing her in the interim custody and were lying with me, as far as I know. What I do know in the background, though, Nicholas, is they had already contacted, while they were interimly, within that first 3 weeks, they'd already contacted my brother and his wife to put an adoption, even though they hadn't even filed in court, had nothing. They were already on the means of that. They're lying to me. I got a telephone call from Paul Lesarge, and he said, you may remember me. I met you the other day. If I'm known that I'm calling you, I could be fired. And he was eventually. But I'm calling you because I can't stand this on my conscience. I'm asked to do things which I don't necessarily believe in, and I don't have a choice. They're going to be filing for your daughter. And I just choke. He says, I said, what do I do? He said, I'm going to give you the best advice I can give you is do not get a lawyer around here because they all work together to create the theft. Go outside, source it out to downtown Toronto, 6 hours away, somewhere that's outside of that thick, rooted community where they're all going to be participate and pay what you need to do. So I did. And then I paid through the nose. So I lost my house. I went out, I paid a $750 an hour lawyer, a couple of them. I did. Paul Lesarge then tried the next evening. He said, I'll meet you after work. We'll see if we can somehow mediate the situation with the supervisors. It was a guy named Barry Rodman who was orchestrating this from CAS. He saw money. He saw an opportunity. And Paul Lesarge had a tear in his eyes. I can't do anything. I tried. Paul eventually was fired months later. But I think that the success what ended up happening then is Children's Aid just kept trying to patchwork silly, trite claims. It tried to take her a month and a half later, claiming I breastfed rather than bottle fed, claiming that I missed her cues and that there wasn't a very good bond between mother and daughter. These were their arguments. So I spent everything I had to lose my house that foreclosed, to have two lawyers who defended that. And they did. They won that argument, which is almost impossible, but they won because I think securities are cashed as soon as these cases are open. You rarely win. And CAS then wanted to find another way to separate us. They drummed up reasons, and we were separated for another 5 months, completely no contact. I went out and found another lawyer, had to borrow money, and thousands of dollars later was able to reinstate to see her. In the meantime, Children's Aid tried going out for another kick of the can a second time. They're allowed to. They don't follow the same procedures as anybody else in court. They can do anything they want. So even though they lose, they still have her. They still kept her. They still kept us apart. They wanted to force some kind of an assessment on me, and which they just. I think they were just evaluating and said, "Oh, I think you're stressed out. Therefore, keep your child." I mean, just silly. arguments. But at any rate, the Children's Aid Society and I had a vehement fight. And in that battle, I lost my house and I had to get a lower caliber lawyer. I had no money left. And the lawyer that I got was a guy named John David Kuhn, J.D. Kuhn. He's currently imprisoned as a dangerous offender. And this is where the story gets interesting. I was fighting very hard. Their assessment was thrown out. I had my own assessment from, and in these, I don't believe that parents should ever have assessments. I think it's part of their silly game. I think it's all a crime. But at the time, I was zooped into playing their game. Okay. It took me years to understand that entire crime syndicate. No parent should have to get any assessments that's on their parenting. However, at the time, I was doing anything to keep my daughter. This John David Kuhn, I didn't know that he was brought into the bar, a member of the Law Society of Ontario, with a previous criminal offense. He sexually assaulted a 12-year-old pedophile. And this Law Society knew this. They buried it. They allowed him to practice law in this dangerous capacity. On the second night, he insisted on meeting me in the evenings. It was the only lawyer I could find in Ottawa to take the case at the last minute. We had like 3 weeks to prepare or something. And he said he would take it. I had nobody else. He sexually assaulted me. It came out of the blue. Police tried to bury it. Some police really tried to help, but the initial Ottawa police buried this. And I remember he wanted to meet me at the office in the evening. Nobody's around. It's sort of on, I don't know what floor up, the 10th floor, 11th, whatever floor it was, up on a office building in the evening. And he brought in like some tea and whatever, the chocolates or cookies. And I just want to talk about my daughter. And like, how do we prepare her? They're trying to, second to get the can, we got to get a strong argument. I didn't think I was kind of concerned about his ability. I wasn't sure. But at any rate, we were talking and I was in the middle of the conversation, Nicholas. I was just stressed on what do we do? What angle do we take? What do we do for our fight? Suddenly out of the blue, he said this, just out of the blue. I had no idea where it was coming from. He said, this is the great thing with lawyers. Doctors can't touch their patients, but we can bang our clients all we want. And I just shivered. Thought, what's going on? I didn't know anybody. At this point, I knew nothing that he had this previous history, that he had that he was a pedophile, that he had all this stuff. I didn't know. I just thought, I got to end this meeting. I got to get out of here. So I said, I got to get going. But remember, I'm in a position where this is my last hope of a lawyer. I've got all these people pitted against me. I've got my parents and my brother and his wife wanting to take my baby. I've got the Children's Aid wanting to, the Office of Children. Like, I'm just got everybody being piranhas around me. So I wanted to just had to get out of that office. So I said, I'll help you take the stuff back to the kitchen. I've got to get going. So I immediately took the stuff into the dark kitchen, and he grabbed me. And I managed to get out of the clasp, and I put the dishes down, and I went back into the boardroom where we had the meeting take place. And then he pushed me onto the table, and I just froze. And after I then was in shock, because here's the problem. Is that I knew as a mediator in that area, as a family mediator, that at this point, the Children's Aid now would have something. Believe it or not, they will argue that if a woman is abused or assaulted, that is a strike against her ability to protect and be a proper parent. That's how they played that in many other cases. And I was aware of it. I thought, oh my God, now they're going to have a reason. So I didn't say anything. I was just shaking. I didn't understand what was happening. And then J.D. Kuhn was in this rage because he knew I was just traumatized and shocked and really revolted from that whole thing. And I just wanted my child back, didn't know what to do. He started to try to convince me to agree to an adoption. I said, why are you doing this? Like a mock adoption. I said, what are you doing? He's got a strong case. I'm not doing this. This is the whole thing I'm trying to stay off. Why would you do such a thing? And then he just got quiet about it. I didn't understand what was happening. He's also like a criminal lawyer trying to get your client to plead guilty so that they all win. Okay. So he was actually trying to do that, working on the other side. I didn't know this at this point. He was just really, really enraged to me. He just felt it was so just like angry. And I didn't know what to do. I had like a week before attending this thing. I thought to myself, well, surely he's a bar member. Surely he's not going to sabotage his own case. He may do like I was concerned about the caliber of his representation, but I mean, surely he's a bar member, he's a lawyer. This is my naivete at the time. So he had a few days to prepare for what would be called this second summary judgment motion. Again, the Children's Aid, Child Protection Services, they don't follow the law. They can do anything they want. They can make up anything. They should have given my daughter back months ago. So my poor daughter was just, gone through shock at this point. So I was visiting with her. They allowed me to see her on what's called a supervised visit. Somebody would have a camera. They filmed me breastfeeding my daughter. They would film me doing all these things. So they're filming and I'm visiting with her, and the courthouse is, I guess, down the street. And so the court time is say 11 o'clock, and I'm with my daughter. And so I arrived into and Kuhn drove himself it was a long drive from Ottawa. It traveled in from 6 hours, and he drove himself. He was at the courthouse already. So I arrived at the courthouse, and I thought, okay, I'm probably it's looking like now when I get to what was going on, it was called a summary judgment motion. It's not the trial, but they can still get a court order. They win every kick of the can. But I was it looked like they probably were going to be denied this time, and it'd have to go to a trial because part of their evidence was not admitted. So I was kind of thinking, okay, probably if they'll get it dismissed, and I'll go to the next stage, and Kuhn can do what he does. But if he's a good lawyer, and then I can change lawyers once this is over. So I arrived at the courthouse doors, and Kuhn ran running up to me. He seemed kind of nervous and kind of like just you could tell kind of an adrenaline kind of coming off of him. And I said, well, where's the courthouse being held? He said, don't worry, I'm going to try to get an agreement to get your daughter back. I said, okay. Because he had told me earlier that he would try to get an agreement that my daughter would come back to live with me and my aunt and uncles, and that they didn't have a very good case. So I said, let's see what you're able to do. So I went down the hall and I sat down in this waiting area. And it was way around the corner. So nobody could see me. I couldn't see them. Because quite frankly, Nicholas, I just was so upset at the farce of the family court. It was like being in a sacrificial ritual, like an Epstein Island. And that it was. And I was the sacrifice. So I was down sitting in the waiting area. And Mr. Kuhn came up to me about 10 minutes before the start. He said, I got great news. You're going to get your daughter back. Quote verbatim. I said, and he handed me he had some papers in his hand. He said, quickly sign this last page. And I said, well, I can't. What is it about? Like, tell me let me read it, please. Can I read the thing? He said, no, there's not enough time to read it. He rushed me like as if there was some kind of big rush. You got to get it signed. I said, well, I need to read it. He rushed me. And I kind of froze and convinced me that there was some kind of rush. And I said, well, okay, what can you just give me the details? And he lied. He said, it's what we agreed upon. Your daughter's coming back to live with you and your aunt and uncle for a little bit of time, and you've got her back. She'll be coming back immediately. So he gave me the loan signature page. It had just this, and I signed it. Okay. And then he took all the papers and went in. And he said, you don't need to come in. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He came back 10 minutes and things seemed really awkward. He kind of diverted my attention for a couple of hours for a walk. And then I came back and thought, well, when's my daughter coming home? And then I found out all about the forged documents within about 6 to 8 days. Everything surfaced. Do you want to cut in at this for a question, or do you want me to?
I was going to say, what were the documents that you signed? What were they about?
Okay. I only signed one document that, again, it was a loan signature page that he would not let me read the agreement. And this is where the sticky part, we tried to have this go through the Crown's office for police agencies had no problem putting this forward as forgery. The Crown attorney, when it came to the last little bit, had difficulty because nobody witnessed the conversation between Kuhn and I. I was told nobody doubted. I was fighting tooth and nail to prevent an adoption. Nobody doubted that. But when it got into the fine details, Kuhn had papers in his hand, handwritten papers. I've got them here. They've got copies of them, and the original is at the courthouse. And he said to me, sign the last page quick to get your daughter back. That's when I said, let me read the content pages of what I'm signing. He would not give them to me and said there was a rush and an urgency. He had to get back. And I foolishly looked at him wearing his bar gown. I thought, he's a lawyer. He's not going to lie to me. He wouldn't. And then I said, well, what is exactly in the content pages? I still wasn't going to sign. You have to tell me. You're my lawyer. You're my best representative. And that's when he lied and said the content pages are that your daughter's coming back to you via an integration period with your aunt and uncle, and she's coming back immediately. She's yours. So I stupidly signed it. And he said, put your initials. What he did is he took it, said he'd be coming back, not to bother. It was a quick fix. He would just go in there and then my daughter's coming back. He'd arrange the details the next few days. What had actually happened is the content pages, he went and forged my initials on them. We have handwriting reports from New York on this. The actual document was I give up my daughter, consent to adoption forever. No contact, no access. Gone. And here's the caveat that I agreed not only to adoption through crown wardship, but I agreed that my daughter was, quote, a child in need of protection. That key phrase is the process phrase that the Children's Aid Society, the mercenary contractee to the government, Child Protective Service, needs to be able to write down, we got another kid. And on top of it, they made millions of dollars on the adoption. Okay, so they need that phrase. So he took that, somebody forged my initials, okay, with the same pen as his within that time, and took this into the judge. So I was sitting in the waiting room thinking, it's over. I can't believe it's over. She's coming back to me. I understand that the Children's Aid didn't have much of a case, and I believe in some integrity of the court. That's what I was thinking. Meanwhile, he walked into a court, handed this to a woman named Kimberly Randell, who's the Children's Aid Society lawyer, and she represented that I agreed to an adoption, crown wardship. She actually said, Mom has agreed, and here's the documents. They all went in, all of them together. A Children's Aid Society worker named Julia Wilkie signed as a supposed witness. She never even saw me that day, another person involved in it, in the crime. They took it into a judge named Justice Drew Gonzalez. And he looked and said, well, Mom's not here, but her representative is. So he signed for final order. And that was it. I was done. I didn't know about the forgery. So in a few days to come, the next day went back home and said, when's my daughter coming back? Coot wouldn't answer the phone. What's going on? And then we started to realize little by little that there were other forged documents, Nicholas. And this didn't come out for about a week before we fished these out. And that's why I had conversations saying, what's going on? And Kuhn said, it's over. You've lost your daughter. We didn't understand how it was going on. What on earth was going on? This is so my support friends, aunt and uncle and partner at the time. Eventually, we were able to recover that 4 days before we went into that, when he forged the consent to adoption and presented that forgery, he concocted up a fraudulent affidavit and forged my signature on an affidavit. I'm confident to say he forged the signature. He notarized it. It was sent from his office. That'll be a sticking point that the Crown would probably come in and say, well, we don't know if somebody else actually forged it. He presented a forged affidavit. He wrote at about 2:00 p.m. He wrote over to the Children's Aid Society lawyer in a text I have, in an email copy I have, Marianne's given up to an adoption. She's consenting to an adoption. I'm going to let you talk to her family members. He was he was having conversations with my parents and Mike and Shannon. He was arranging the adoption 4 days prior to all of this. So meanwhile, I'm at home thinking he's doing up documents to fight to get my daughter back. He's arranging for this to happen. So he spoke to, and this is a key point, Nicholas, I want this to be, because I'm hoping my daughter will someday watch this. And it's not out of vengeance. It's just, I have to tell the story. I have to tell what was said. I don't know Shannon, Mike's wife. We'd had some difficult, the few times I'd met her at her wedding, she didn't She didn't take to me. She had me erased from her photographs. We never really spent time. But all I know, she lived 4 provinces away, and she said to me on the phone, I had no idea what conversations Kuhn had drummed up an already pre-existing kind of awkwardness. And she said to me, 'cause I was supposed to call her to get information for my plan of care. And I said, listen, Shannon, I don't want you involved anymore. I don't feel comfortable with this. She said, this is what she said. I'm going to adopt Padme, my daughter. You'll have no access. You'll never see her again. And there's nothing you can do about it. And she said that at 2:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 13th. And nobody has that recorded, but I heard it. And I thought, what's going on to the family? They're trying to steal my child, and they really want to. And key point is the woman who has my daughter doesn't want me to ever see her again. She expressed that. This wasn't a matter of a kind family member saying, okay, well, I found that, there's some problems. I'm going to help out, and I'm going to be a little tough love and take, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a woman or a couple, my brothers, and who have set out to never let me ever have a relationship or meet my daughter. And thus far in 14 years, that's exactly what they've been doing.
So this is your brother, your own family member supporting this. And what kind of dysfunctional behavior is this coming from a sibling? I mean, I don't understand that.
That's a very good point. There we get into the crux of a family dynamic, and this is where I found the Quebec police were very good. Some of the later renditions from the Ottawa police, because they do pick it up later, and they went into the actual dynamics of the family, because normally family dynamics like this should never ever have the power to have stolen a child and done this. But it's a myriad of characters. It's a recipe. When you've got the government that wants to have this trauma and this separation anyway, and a government that's gaining, and then epigenetic research, everybody gaining, they seize on it. But I'm going to get into the dysfunction. It was a family that would have normally seemed to have been somewhat normal. There was certainly some alcohol use on my parents' part. But I think that Mike left the family pretty early when he was in his 20s, and he was a scientist. He did his master's in geophysics, and we had a pretty good relationship, I thought. I mean, but he claimed he was courted by some of the oil tycoons and oil companies in Calgary. And I found a huge change in him. Like, I don't know, our relationship seemed to sort of devolve at that point, and in his late 20s. And then he met his wife to be, Shannon. I don't understand why Mike and Shannon felt sort of still a competitiveness, or why they did what they did. Some of the questions I don't have answers for. The family had Roman Catholic, it was a combination of Roman Catholic values, maybe a little bit of control because of the previous battles with my sons, for which they had been brought in through the other children's aid. And it was all brewed up. It's really hard to sort of say. And at this point, as I'm trying to, in the very least, I've been able to mend fences with my mother and father. They're in their 80s, and I don't see the point of what it does at this point. They can't do very much to assist anymore. And I've had some conversations where, in fact, my father has at least helped a little in recognizing the part on Kuhn. But the family really thinks it's great what it's accomplished.
Well, even your mom and dad. So, yeah.
I think my father has... I think he's torn, because I have had conversations where he does recognize sometimes in different aspects, he does recognize that that this is not just that Kuhn committed forgery, but then when you cause an obstacle between a mother and a daughter, you obstacle that DNA connection, you absolutely destroy the child. And I've tried to explain that, sending just scientific references, if nothing else, how the children missing one or both biological parents will suffer trauma for the rest of their lives. I think he struggles with it. And again, I'm trying to remend that relationship. But Mike and Shannon remain completely desensitized. They actually had called the Calgary police when I tried to attend a family court proceeding in 2014. I did challenge them through their system because they took her. And they took her way before the appeal happened. They tried to get a an adoption while I was fighting vehemently about the forgery, and they were well aware of it. So I did take them to family court. Mike put up posters of my photograph, I'm told, around the neighborhood like I was a wanted. It was humiliating. I never saw this. I had to travel to Alberta to attend, and I, in fact, lodged myself an hour outside of the
This is this is terrible behavior, even coming from a brother, and even if he believed there was something wrong with you, not that there was, you just wouldn't go about doing that with your sister, you know. So just from that behavior, you can see that it's something very. There's no empathy, very dysfunctional. There's no support there. There's no nothing.
Yeah. Well, I would say the lack of empathy. The real problem, as I said, I'm being able to have conversations with my mom and dad to this day, which I'm happy that I think I'm working with it. But Mike and Shannon are completely desensitized. I've tried reaching out to them in my Stockholm syndrome. I reached out to her saying, here's some flowers. Here's thank you for help. Whatever you had to do. Can I please have my daughter back? Can I even see my daughter? Can I even, I begged at one point. And she absolutely, they absolutely won't let me have a thing to do with her because they know it's a crime. It's a.
But what's their reason? What's their reason?
I don't know if you have to have it's a good point. I mean, there's a guy named Dr. William Dubree, who's a professor of psychology, talks about people who harbor children. Often it's not a reasoning so much as that the child fulfills a lack and it becomes a security blanket, and that they know that they're hurting me, that they're hurting the deprived parent, in this case, me, and that's a kind of a sadistic behavior of exporting anger, so that they will actually get a high from knowing I'm hurting that person. I'm a hurting person inside, but by hurting mom there and keeping the child away, there's a gain of some sort. William Dubree talks about it and makes a lot of sense about it, because you see a lot of these alienations that can come from other parents or other situations where the people who capture the children actually not only, it's an export of their rage and anger to be able to cause pain to me. I mean, they're causing pain to my daughter. But I mean, remember that the key thing that Shannon said on June 13th was, I'm going to adopt your daughter. You'll have no access and you'll never see her again. And there's nothing you can do about it. So the intention was clearly expressed. Had she said something like, listen, I've heard that, there's you haven't been a responsible mother, or there's doings with the children's aid, and I'm kind of concerned about the niece of my husband. I can understand that. I can even understand, taking some time and reaching out later and saying, I can even work with saying, let's find out what's happened, and I'm taking a strong, tough love. But that's not what she's doing.
I mean, my brother's having a baby, and if I felt that there was, he was a bad father, I would try to help him, and I would offer him hospitality for my nephew here in my house. I would help out. I would, I wouldn't start threatening and to remove their child that's causing them grief, even if he is going through something and he is incapable of raising that. I wouldn't want to cause that grief and make his mental state even worse, so there's something dysfunctional about the way they handled that, irrespective of your condition, whatever I'm not saying there is.
Yeah, I understand.
It's almost like they've got demons possessed in them, and they're working for some demonic entity, deep state here.
That is what I would say is a perfect way of describing it, because the current situation is interesting, Nicholas, because they've been given a lot. I don't know how they've gotten a lot of money that they do, but they do. They have a house that they built in British Columbia, where they are now in Fernie, British Columbia. However, Mike has been living for 4 years in Houston, Texas, with an oil company. Now, whether they are officially separated, he's been living there for 4 years and flies back, I am told, on once a month. I don't know what the situation is. To me, that's separated, but I don't know. That's not going to go into it. But you would think they know about the forgery. They're aware I'm desperately spent 14 years getting police investigations, doing a federal court. Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I was just taking a deep breath because I'm short-breathed. I do apologize.
I mean, the amount, if you were to take a look at what I went through and how many court cases, at a certain point, I just learned how to present myself. I couldn't afford it anymore. And then I started to realize that I had a stronger voice. I even tried to get a private prosecution against Kuhn. Kuhn, by the way, fled the country, J.D. Kuhn, after the forgery of the signatures. He had yet another, he was found, he pled guilty to sexual interference on a 4-year-old, same time as me. Okay, same time the thing happened to me. And again, they're burying it. The Law Society of Ontario is burying it. The Crown prosecutor is burying it. They're all burying this, and they know this. The Alberta government is counting on, they have the false fraudulent status of adoption. They're aware of this, and they're burying it. What does that make somebody, an entity or people who are aware and complicit?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that is actually factual. I've got factually. But I mean, I have seen a little bit of an initiative from I read some of the judiciary in the Lindsay court where that fraudulent court order. Gonzalez was. I wrote to him 2 or 3 times. Justice Gonzalez, you've had forgery presented. He rooted me into an appeal. You don't do an appeal. Appeal is done when there's an error in law. You've got crime in your court, and it should have been resolved. Anyway, I'm sort of going off the tangent here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, we are running out of time, so I want to run through a few questions with you. So when was the last time? So your daughter's 14. When was the last time you saw her?
I think it was in June or July of 2013. So she would have not quite been 2 years old, and I hope she remembers. I think it was the last time she saw me, or the second last time, Nicholas. I hope she remembers this. I'm told that childhood traumas are last in the brain.
Yeah.
I walked her over to go with a foster person and the Children's Aid Society agent, a couple of them. And my daughter was so awesome and so brave. And she said, wait a minute. She wasn't even 2. Why isn't mommy coming? She said, why does mommy never come? And they were scowling at her. And I said, I am so proud of you, Padme. She kissed me. I said, I'm so proud of you. I'm always proud of you. That is the most bravest, intelligent thing to say. And I never want you to stop asking that question. I'm so proud of you. And I hope she asks it to this day, because it's a crime. Go ahead, Nick.
Wow. And so she's 14 now. And you know your 2 sons, you speak to them now. You've got full access to them.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're in their 20s. And I have to, their father has been extremely encouraging and really helpful. There was no reason to have, when the Children's Aid Society came in that case, they just pitted mom versus dad. There's no reason for that. But we've been able to mend it. They're 25 and 27. My 25-year-old doesn't really speak to me yet, but I do speak back and forth with my older one, yes.
Do they have any contact with your daughter?
No.
And your daughter, she's 14 now, so I would say the only positive thing that I could say is that she's 2 years away, or 4 years away from 18 years old. So, which means that she's going to start asking questions. She's going to be curious, and she may appear on social media. How does that make you feel?
I'm hoping that's the only hope right now. And the problem is that I've seen is that there's no, she's on no social media platforms whatsoever. There's very little way. The problem that I foresee is that my daughter, like many alienated children, it's the parental alienation, the violence takes place in the abuse that I'm going to describe, because over and over for the last, let's say 12 years she's been with Mike and Shannon, the message comes to her very clearly: your mom's crazy, your mom's bad, don't go near her. So my daughter is not going to want to go near me. because if she does, she's going to feel it from the hand that feeds her. You see
Mm.
how this works? That's how the
Um,
alienation.
yes, but naturally, um, a person, usually wants to know for themselves. So they might hear stories, but they want to know for themselves. It's something that they just need closure for
Yeah.
themselves. And she might make that decision to say, no, I've heard so many stories, but I want to know for myself, So there's a big possibility there.
I'm hoping that's my only hope, because I've
Yeah.
come to the conclusion, having met many other parents, that the courts will give no hope. I could go to the Hague
I mean,
in Netherlands.
when she's 18, the courts can't get involved after that.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what this is my only hope, is that somehow this will reach her and there
Yeah.
will be support around her to know that coming here is not what you've been told. Your whole life will open up to come to mom, because I'm not going to deny you to anybody. This is open, and have your relationship back, and you can decide how you want to work with all the people around, and have a very like have a view of how people, why, and so on, and don't blame them, just understand. And I can give this. I'm her mother, and I just hope that she reaches out in
Well,
some way.
when she was 2 years old and she said, well, where's my mom? Why isn't she here? You said, um, for a 2-year-old, there's a sign there that she's got some leadership, you know? So now that she's growing older, that leadership could blossom into, I want to know for myself. I've heard this and this and this. I want to know for myself. Have you thought about getting your own private investigators to look into this?
I have that was brought to my attention from one of the groups in California that works with parental alienation, just to understand where she's coming from. That would be a good idea. The difficulty that I would have if I landed on the soil there myself, they would just show their court order, as fraudulent as it is, or whatever they've got their adoption status, and they would probably call the police on me, and then they'd want to sort out in family court, because the system is all, it's all in a syndicate of that. So I think it's if she reaches out to me or has support from other people watching who can give her that genuine
Yeah.
support.
What's her name?
Padme. They truncated her name to Mae, Mae, which is typically what they do with these criminal adoptions in the South Korea. They were truncating the names of the children so they lose their identity. So they truncated her name to Mae. She goes by Mae Carolyn Perz. Her real name is, and it's recognized by the government still, her real name, as I gave, is Padme Regina Christine Perz.
You say that you're not allowed to go onto the soil because then that will cause issue. What I would do is I would maybe consider, and I know you've probably tried this, and I can't imagine what you're going through. So, but maybe get someone on never go on the soil, get investigators, and maybe you could have somebody on your behalf go on the soil to do all of that groundwork for you.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping. And then that it's a little bit of a smoother pathway for her. I'm trying to think of how she's feeling and what would not re-shock and re-devastate her. That would probably be.
But the good news is that she's 4 years away from 18 years old. She's going to be a grown woman, at the very least. And the courts cannot get involved after she'll be an adult. But it's very devastating to hear what you've gone through. It sounds like you've had a very rough life. It's
been the last 14 years, ever since those services went into my world. I haven't had it's almost like I've become loose energy for, this is how I've often felt, is it just stole my life, because all I've been doing is fighting for my children to have their mother. And it's been a very painful learning epiphany that the courts not only are not going to resolve it, and I'm not going to say they're corrupt, I'm going to go one step worse. They're part of the crime syndicate. They are that.
They are, yes.
That's it. It's commercializing and doing. That's what it is. So they're not going to yield any resolution. And the good people, and I have met some good people who have tried, are going to be flustered and meet with obstacles and not understand why, because they're fighting a brick wall. The machine has just said, no,
Yeah.
we got her. We have had her since the first 30, since we've had her, we've got her. The securities are cashed, the adoption money is cashed, and it continues to flow. The government of Alberta continues to make, all of that's happening.
Absolutely. Marianne, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate that. But just before we finish, please just finalize, is there anything that you'd like to say to the viewers today? If you'd like to maybe, spell out your email address or how people can find you if they want to get involved and help you or anything like that, just this is your space.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. Well, last night, Ryan helped me to, at least, I don't go on social media, but I put up an X. I don't know. I put one at Marianne Perz. I don't know if that will be one way for people to contact me, but I'm happy to give out my email as well. I'll give out the email that is out, which is maperz911 at gmail.com. So it's MapPerz, if we can. And if I'm hoping if somebody is in Fernie, BC, you do know May, she goes by May Perz. That's my daughter. Please, somebody reach out to me. Please reach to her. Please help us, because the government has committed a coup and through orchestrating all the family, and I'm not going to get any help from the actual people who have her. So thank you.
You're very welcome. The email that you just spelled out, was that the same email that we used for the booking for this interview?
It could have been. I can also give the other one. Yeah, so it's. I can give you both if you're able to put on the show. So I gave that one because that's the one that I'm a mediator with the and that is the email that publicly goes out, which is maperz911 at gmail.com. There's a Marianne Perz at iCloud.com as well. So you're welcome to post that if anybody is able to. And again, I opened an X, which is, I don't plan to use it in any other capacity than a contact from my daughter at Marianne. If anybody can help to tell her what's happened.
We would love to help. And if anyone is watching and you can help, you think you can help, please get in touch with Marianne. And Marianne, this is what this platform's about, is for people like you to come and expose the corruption and get you help. And I really appreciate your time and sharing this sensitive journey of yours. And thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Take care.